Welcome, everybody, to our presentation. We are the first to go, so if we don't sound like we're wide awake yet, that's the reason. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here in sunny Florida, and not sure the weather in Virginia, but that's where my partner Brent Reed is. My name is Josh Wertheim. I am president of Wertheim Global Solutions, and for us, it's the morning. If you are watching this pre-recorded session at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, I'd like to say good afternoon, or if you're in Europe, good evening. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not sure what time it is there, but good day to you. So today we're going to talk about a subject that I believe not enough people pay enough attention to, or at least not the right way. And it is dealing with internal information theft, which I include phishing in the discussion. And I'll explain why as I go through the presentation. Uh, we have been thinking about this ever since Edward Snowden hit, and we believe as we go through the presentation, you'll see why this is such an important topic for people to pay attention to. So let me start off with why this is so important, how prevalent it is, and a lot of folks don't realize this. Uh, 34% of businesses experience insider theft annually. That's a 47% increase in insider thefts over the last 2 years. And as you see at the bottom, this is a report that was published just back in August. So we're talking, very recent statistics that I'm quoting. Uh, 74% of organizations report insider theft as a growing threat, and 56% of that comes from employees or partners who have valid credentials to get into the system. And 44% of that are from phishing attacks, where somebody steals a user's credentials and pretends to be that user. Let me drill down to what the cost of internal information theft is. And this is from IBM's just released back in October Internal Theft and Phishing Data Breach Report, where they discuss in detail the cost associated with an internal data breach. One of the most important things they point out is how long it takes for people to uncover an internal breach. And as a matter of fact, it takes an average of 292 days to identify and contain an internal information breach. Think about that. If you have an end user who has stolen documents, it would be back in January of 2024 where they may have done it, and you're just finding out about it now. That's how long the average internal theft takes to identify and contain. The financial burden is enormous, and it's very important that you find and remedy internal theft as quickly as possible. The cost of an internal theft also is the highest cost of any type of breach. It says so right in this report, and it's almost $5 million per incident is the average cost for remedying and rectifying an internal a breach by an internal user. What are the costs that are associated with internal theft, according to IBM? Well, there are the direct financial costs, the investigation, the fines, the compensation you may have to make to affected parties. And a big one for a lot of our clients is cyber insurance premiums, which, according to another report I was reading, can double or more depending upon the size of the breach. Double or more. And in addition to that, they talk about how much more scrutiny a cyber insurance company will put you through in order to even give you a policy after you've been breached. There is the lost business and revenue of an internal breach, losing customers, the downtime, the operational disruptions, and overall impact on the business that can occur when you have an internal breach. There's the reputational damage. Imagine if a employee of your company steals information related to a specific client, and it gets out in the real world that this has happened, all your other clients are going to be concerned that their information might be subject to theft as well. Then there are the hidden costs. What happens to employees' morale? It might lead to higher turnover. It might lead to difficulties in attracting new people. And then there's the post-breach remediation, which they list as training or retraining, having to change your system, having to add new security measures, possible litigation costs, and other long-term expenses. So all in all, suffering an internal breach can be very damaging to an organization. And I scratch my head, to be perfectly honest, that a lot of folks just don't pay that much attention to it, as we will see as I go through this presentation. So yesterday, another breach was reported. We see the breaches all the time in the news. And yesterday, there was another breach, of course, because there's one every day. And as a matter of fact, I'm looking at the graphic on the left. That was last week. We did this presentation last week, and I need to change that. So let me get rid of that one. And let's talk about one that just happened on Monday, or was reported on Monday, where there was this breach of a Chinese hedge fund manager was indicted in the United States, stealing trade secrets. See, this happens all the time. The theft went undetected until the information was used. And in this case, just like all the other cases I'll be referring to, the user had access to the system, was granted access, and was taking documents out of the system, and nobody noticed until the information in this case was used. And that's when the company found out about it, and then they took action while after the information was already gone. It's not new. It's happening everywhere. Since yesterday, since that one screenshot came out, hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations have likely suffered the same fate. You may not find out about 99% of them because 99% of them don't make the news. 99% of them, the people don't want anybody to know about it. They'll fix it internally unless it affects the client, and then they just want the client to know and nobody else. But it's not something that always makes the news. And if it happened to you, would you want it to be in the news? So whether or not you choose to work with us, you have to make sure you're protected against these thefts. And the moral of the story is the best time to stop the theft is while it's occurring, because if you try to stop, you can't stop it once the documents are out there. So you need to stop it while it's happening. And one other point to make with this is a lot of folks think that they can figure out a person is going to steal documents based upon trends and analysis and artificial intelligence. My opinion on that subject is most people don't act like they're going to steal documents enough that any other system is going to be able to identify that they're trying to steal documents at the point where they do that. So you need to be able to analyze what people are doing while they're doing it and while they're stealing documents, because afterwards, once again, it's too late. So there's this growing threat of internal theft. The internal thief or a phisher can strike anytime, anywhere. And the question we have is, will you be ready to stop them when they do? We are asked all the time, well, I secure my documents. I make sure that the documents are always secure just to the people who need to have access to them. And of course, that is very important. When a document is secured, it's because something about the information cannot be shared. It could be the subject, it could be the contents, it could be the metadata, or it could be that the people who are writing it or it's written for needed to be kept secret. It may be hidden from a specific user. You may want to hide it from a group of users. You may want to hide it from everybody else in the organization, or you may want nobody else to know about it except the people it's written for and the people who are doing the writing. So it's basically only shared on a need-to-know basis, and setting the permissions makes sure that only those right people can access the information. But it's just one piece. With millions of pieces of information, how do you know that your permissions are always set correctly. If your permissions are set by the end users, how do you know that they're always setting the right permissions to the documents? Now, there are ways that you can automate the process. So, for instance, if it's identified as a document for a specific client, you can set rules that say this client, the documents for this client should be secured to this user, that user, and some other user or group of users. Then you have to rely upon the trust that user is going to set it prop. Doesn't You don't have to worry whether that user is setting it properly or not, but you have to rely upon the trust of the users that are granted access, that they won't abuse that trust. So if I'm an end user and I'm granted rights to all these documents, you have to trust that I'm not going to abuse the rights to access those documents and try to do something I'm not supposed to do with the document. Because it's when the wrong person accesses the confidential information, that's when the problems occur. So what happens when a valid user goes rogue? They don't need to hack into your system to steal information. All they have to do is log in as themselves or log in as a user whose credentials they have stolen. And of course, a couple of examples are Edward Snowden, who was a person who worked at the NSA, very high level of security clearance, was given rights to practically the entire repository of information and stole 1.8 million documents right under the noses of the people at the NSA. Recently, there were the Iranian hackers and used stolen credentials and phished information that was very sensitive. Even authorized users who mean well can compromise security if they are subject to a phishing expedition and they reply to an email or a text message or some other method of trying to get access to the credentials that people nowadays use. The thing is, it can happen to anyone. No organization is immune from internal information theft. How do you know it hasn't already happened? If it takes 292 days or more to find out that a breach occurred, how do you know that somebody hasn't stolen documents that you've never found out about? Or how do you know that somebody stole documents within the last 30 days, the last 20 days, the last 10 days? Or how do you know somebody isn't stealing information while you're watching this webinar? There are the consequences of internal information theft. I started to go through them before, but let me list them again now that I've laid out some parameters here. There's the financial costs, there's the damage to your reputation, there's the disruption, there's the loss of trust, there's the loss of revenue, and there are the higher insurance premiums. There is some commonality upon every victim, whether you're the NSA or Facebook or Disney or Mossack Fonseca with the Panama Papers or the Department of Department of Defense, who recently was hacked by a junior clerk somewhere in the Northeast and put the documents on the dark web. They all relied on trust, and there was no oversight. No oversight whatsoever to make sure the people who were accessing confidential information weren't abusing their privilege to do so. These are some of the common mistakes we see. Not estimating properly the risk of internal information theft, relying only on trust when granting access to information based on their role within the organization. You hire me. I am responsible. I'm a paralegal working on a specific case. So I'm granted access to all the documents for that case without limitation. How do you know that a paralegal like me isn't going to one day want to steal the documents for one of many reasons? The other mistake that a lot of folks make is they believe that the systems they have now will be able to stop me from accessing and stealing those documents that I, as a paralegal, have access to. The difference between securing yourself from an external threat and securing yourself from an internal threat are oceans apart. Totally different approach that you have to take to both. So your choice when it comes to internal threats are Do you want to continue to trust the people who have access to your documents and just hope for the best? Or do you want to implement a solution that prevents these rogue users and phishers from stealing your information, either in a content server repository or an eDocs repository, which is why we're here. So we have the solution. It's called Guardian, and it's been around for a while. It's on the OpenText price list, and basically it will stop a user in the act of stealing information, and we're going to show you how that works in just a moment. So at this point, we're going to run the demo and take a few minutes. Let me just switch this over to Brent, so just give me a second. I wanted to start the demo with this. Let's pretend for argument's sake that I have received a message in my inbox on my phone that this fellow has zipped and downloaded a large number of documents between 1:47 a.m. and 5:08 a.m. And I was asleep at that time, so I'm just seeing this now. But I see that the system has disabled the account, and I should go now and review this activity of this user and report back to the security office at once, because they were concerned enough automatically using our product to be notified that this user zipped and downloaded a huge number of files. So now with that, let me hand it over to Brent. Just give me 1 second, and here we go.
All right. Okay, this is the Enterprise Management Console for Guardian. And since we have a user that was just disabled, I'll sort of alter the order of the demo. And let's go and look at our disabled users. As Josh said, he got the notification that someone had been downloading documents. And this is what you see when you go into Guardian to investigate that user and check up on them. So the notification that Josh got on his phone tells you some of the information, and you can see that it's reiterated here. You have the username, you see which rule that they broke, the description, what activity they were performing, and who the user was, and the date. It also gives you some additional information. You can see what they were doing. So they downloaded a total of 221 documents before the trigger kicked in. It also shows what violation activity happened for the period that they were working. And it gives you an insight into the last 7 days of their activity. So you can see what they've been doing. So you can see that the other day they downloaded a bunch of documents, then they downloaded a few more, and then today they went above the threshold. So they hit a line above their normal activity, and that's what flagged their account by Guardian to notify us that, hey, something's up. You can also look at what other things they've been doing. They've been printing some documents, reclassifying, copying, they deleted. So you can really get a good picture of what that user's been doing over the last week. So you can see, what led up to this breaking of the predictive rule. So like I said, we're going a little bit backwards. You'll understand all this information a little better as I walk through how Guardian works. But this shows you the end result and the information that Guardian gives you about someone who has violated a rule. Now, should we decide that this was normal activity, say we contact Edward Snowden's boss and he said, oh yes, I gave him an extra project to work on, that's perfectly fine that he's downloading these documents, you can let him continue on. All we have to do is click on this and re-enable the user, and then that user can get back to work. Because, hey, sometimes false positives will happen. So it's really easy for the user to get back on their task and continue their work. Let's go back to the beginning. Guardian is set up to monitor activities and watch for variations in the amount of the activity that a user performs. So when we create a rule, we give it a name. This is for content server. And as you can see up here, there's one interface, and we can support multiple libraries. So we can also support an eDocs library from the same interface. And we can support multiple content server libraries as well. We're going to concentrate on the content server today, and the functionality is the same no matter what product you're using. So you basically set up some information about the rule. Is it allowed to disable users and re-enable them? and what kind of rule period are you using. Because we do have custom counts that we can use for testing the system. So you can put in some test values, like if somebody downloads more than 100 documents in an hour, then it'll send out an alert. And that's a good way to test the system. But the predictive analysis is the brains of Guardian. It's a complex algorithm that looks at the user's past behavior and compares it to their current behavior and determines the difference. Now, on this next screen, you choose the activities that you're going to be monitoring, and then you set up the thresholds at which you want to get notifications. So, for example, we were using the zip and download. And that's a good one to start with because that gets documents out of your system and out from under the control of the system so somebody can do whatever they want, post them, distribute them, whatever. So we're monitoring the zip and download activity. And what this 120 means is that when the user's behavior is 120% above normal, then it will notify the group that you specify in this window. So in this case, if somebody normally downloads 100 documents a day and they get to 120, well, that first level notification group is going to get an email saying, hey, this user hit this first threshold. And the user doesn't know anything. The user is totally unaware that this is going on. And at that point, the manager can look at it, look at the behavior, and determine, hey, is this, normal behavior, or do we want to keep a close eye on this person? Or say, for example, it's happening at 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody's there to get the email. That's why we have a second threshold. If the user keeps going and reaches 140% in this instance, which is what the 140 is, it's going to perform the action of disabling their account, and it's going to notify the level 2 notification group, which could be some of the same people or different people. That's up to you for your organization to determine. But at this point, their account's disabled. They won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to log in, open a document, print a document, nothing. So this successfully stops someone from doing more damage than possible. They have to still be able to do their job, so you can't deny them the opportunity to perform these activities, but this keeps them from going above and beyond. It spots irregular activities. Some of the other activities that we're monitoring are deleting documents. So if someone's deleting more documents than they normally would, or if they're moving them from one place to another, copying a bunch of documents, maybe changing the attributes, or even viewing documents. You can view a document, take a screen print, and once again, it takes it out from under control of your document management system that has security in place, and then it can be placed out into the wild. It can also monitor login failures or any activity that is logged by the document management system. So you can add additional activities simply by choosing, we're doing a content server, and we want to add an activity. So we might change, maybe we want to know how many times somebody logs in. If they log in more times than normal, then that's another activity that we can start monitoring. So we would set what we wanted for the activity level. If they're logging in 150% times more often than they usually do, then we're going to say, let's notify this first level group. And then let's do the second one for our disable. So if we say at 180%, then we disable the account. And again, we're going to notify the second level group. So that's how easy it is to add another activity into your monitoring. So you can monitor as many activities as you want. You can also add different levels. So for example, maybe we wanted to put a level in between on this login, and let's go ahead and add that. You can actually have 3 levels.
You can have as many
check
as you
my
want.
content server first, and then add my login. And on this one, let's put it right in the middle. Let's say 170. We'll have another notify in between, so that way we don't disable people too early. And then we can save that. And now we have 3 levels that we're monitoring the login on, and it won't disable until it hits the 3rd. And this is a decision for you to make within your company to decide, how loose or how tight you want your rules to be. If you wanted to be very strict, you could disable someone's account the first time they hit one threshold. However, that could get in the way of doing business and could cause, a lockout when it's not necessary. So we recommend that you have at least 2 levels. Now, we do have some granularity because not everybody works with the most sensitive documents in a company. So this particular rule applies to everybody in the library. However, if we wanted to create some really tight rules with lower thresholds for someone like HR, we could create a rule and apply it, say, to, well, let's say here's legal. The legal, of course, they have very sensitive documents. So we might put some very strict thresholds on our legal department. So that way, if their credentials get phished or we have a bad apple in the legal department, they're really limited in the damage they'd be able to do. At an even more granular level, you could add a single user. Say, for example, you hired somebody from one of your competitors and you're not quite sure if their motives are pure or if they might be there as a spy for their boss. You could create a rule for a particular user that is really strict and would let you know if they started performing suspicious activities, but it wouldn't apply to everybody in the company. So you can keep an eye on somebody, say for the first 6 months or a year, to make sure that they're, legitimate and they are who they say they are. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to remove these. Just wanted to show you the granularity that you have and the flexibility you have. So you've now seen Guardian. It's very, very simple, and in its simplicity is what gives it its power. It's very easy to set up. You choose the activities you're going to monitor. You decide the levels that you want to monitor and set the thresholds for, and you decide who you're going to monitor. And then you sit back and let it do its job. And again, that's it in a nutshell. So you have the benefit of a very simple, easy to use system that is very powerful and runs 24/7 and lets you know when there's a problem instead of you finding out after the fact. And that concludes the demo part. And I'm ready to turn it back over to Josh so he can tell you a little bit more about how Guardian works and how it can benefit your company.
Okay, so thank you, Brent. Really appreciate it. We're going to go through some slides about Guardian without getting too granular on the details of the specific features and functions of it. But overall, what it does is it monitors user behavior and sends alerts, as we saw before. And this is another example up here on the screen that this user has zipped and downloaded an unusual number of secured documents. And perhaps I want to review this person's activity. It can disable accounts when suspicious behavior continues, which is the screenshot we saw before of what you might get on a phone that says this person has zipped and downloaded a very large number of secure documents, and we have disabled this person's account. So review his activity at once, because we don't want that person having to sit there waiting a long time if what they're doing is legitimate. And it's the only solution that integrates with the application's activities. And I'd like to get into a little more detail on that. You notice on the left side, I have another screenshot where we're informing the user that they've been disabled. We don't do that. It was just to kind of give an example of what we could do. We typically don't tell the users they've been disabled because then they know they've been watched. I think being disabled and all of a sudden unable to do work is enough of a tip off that they're doing something, they possibly doing something they shouldn't have been doing. But getting back to integration, integration is key to being able to stop a user who might be stealing documents. If you have a system that's only tracking file accesses, for instance, you don't know what type of file access they're performing. So they may be accessing files that are encrypted, that they can't access outside of the EDRMS system or the OpenText content suite integration that they're using it for, like SAP. So you don't know what the activity is that they're doing when they access the file. But more important is they don't access the file. They go through a middle tier or two or three in order to get to the documents. And it's that last tier that touches the document store that's actually being recorded as the access point for the documents. So in the eDocs world, for instance, there's something called the DM server. And when a user performs an operation where they want to say, download a document, they pass the request to the DM server. And the DM server does all the work, retrieving the document from the file server, unencrypting it if it's encrypted, and then sending it to you or wherever you tell it to send it to. So using a DM, using a system like OpenText Content Server or eDocs, or pretty much everyone nowadays, getting that information at the file level is practically useless. However, we go a little step further. We monitor the specific types of activities within the application, in this case, say content server, to determine whether or not that specific action is allowable and how much of that action is allowable before we start sending out the notifications and the disabling if necessary. So we can monitor that by accessing the activity tables in the system, as well as the user tables, the groups tables, and the security table to determine whether the document is a secure document, meaning it needs to be hidden from certain people, or whether it's a public document that honestly we don't care about. If a user downloads 10,000 public documents, they're public. Who cares? But if they're downloading one secure document and they're going to use it to earn money or to maybe rat on a fellow coworker or whatever the reason is, you need to know about it. You need to stop them. So it works with all integrated platforms for Content Server and eDocs. So if you're an SAP user who uses Content Server as the access point to get the documents on the file share, because SAP goes through Content Server, we can monitor what the user in SAP is doing to determine whether or not they're accessing too much content for the wrong reasons. I think I mentioned before, at least once, that this was inspired by Edward Snowden's case. So when I learned about the Edward Snowden's situation, that he had stolen all those documents and nobody knew about it, I tried to think of a way that we could perhaps stop him. And I believe Guardian is the type of application that's necessary to stop someone like Edward Snowden from being able to walk in, download 1.8 million documents, and walk out the door with nobody knowing about it until they read about it in the newspaper. So getting back to some of the reasons, a little more detail about some of the reasons we listed before. It's the real-time monitoring. It's instantaneous. When it finds a user has done more than they're supposed to, it immediately sends out the notification. So while you're in the middle of downloading perhaps thousands of documents, if the threshold is set to send a notification when they've hit 120% of their normal behavior, you find out about that way early in the process of them stealing the documents. And what happens is the system is triggered when users exceed those thresholds and take immediate action for you to be able to investigate and stop them from taking any more. So it's based upon these thresholds, and that's another important part about Guardian. You can set thresholds to determine when you want to be notified, how much they do that will trigger a notification, and you can set them at custom levels based upon the person's role in the organization or the department that they're working in or the location or which specific clients they're working on. Perhaps some clients are more sensitive than the others. So you need to set more tight rules around those clients. Those are the sorts of things that Guardian can do and that you can set thresholds around. And the disabling is a key part. When we show the disabling to people who are looking at alternatives for the types of systems that we sell, the disabling is really important to most of them. Some of them don't even think about that. Some think that all they really need is to be notified and they can take it from there. But what if they're downloading documents at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and you're sound asleep? And so you don't see the notification that they're downloading documents, and they keep downloading them and thinking they'll never get caught. Nobody's paying attention to them. So maybe at 2:05, another notification goes out, and you don't see that one either. And then at 2:15, not only does a notification go out, but the account is disabled. So there's Edward Snowden, 2:15 in the morning. He's downloaded a few hundred documents. And when it hits the 201st document, all of a sudden it stops. It says you no longer have access to the system, and you're scratching your head if you're Edward, saying, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble." And I think to myself, if that had happened with Edward Snowden, the boss would have woken up in the morning and he would have contacted the person in charge of the department and said, "Did you hear about this? Edward Snowden downloading documents?" And the person in security said, "Yeah, we've been on it since I first woke up at 6 a.m. There are officers on their way to his house right now to arrest him." And never would have happened. So it's real-time monitoring that's important. So by monitoring them in real time, we can really stop the exfiltration of the information, especially the sensitive information. And it may not be the only part of a cybersecurity strategy that you implement for internal thefts. There may be other things you want to implement as well. But I think without without the Guardian real-time monitoring, you're missing a key part that could be the missing link that will save you and your organization from some serious consequences. Now, this is an offer that we're making to customers and to partners. So regardless of which one you are, we thought we'd let you in on what we're planning to do or are doing as we speak. The first thing is we offer a 90-day complimentary pilot license. I don't care if you have 100 users or 100,000 users. We'll give you a 90-day pilot license. The only thing we ask for is a maintenance fee that covers the 90 days, which is refundable if you finish the pilot and say you don't want Guardian. We'll give you the money back. We will provide you with the support that you need to get it up and running for those 90 days, free of charge, and we will support the client. We'll support the partner, whatever it takes for you to be able to be successful. We ask for some predefined acceptance criteria to make sure that we're on the same page about what it will take for you to sign off on getting Guardian. And if we meet those objectives, that you will get Guardian. And if we don't, then of course, all you've done is spend some time allocating a couple of resources to test it out and make sure it will work in your environment. We do have different ways to obtain the software, the licenses at least. You can purchase it, or you can buy it on what I call a rental basis or service software as a service option if you choose. And for those organizations that participate in our pilot program, we will give you up to a 50% discount off of the licenses. That's a huge discount for going through the pilot and spending the time and the effort to make sure that Guardian will work in your environment. So as appreciation for that, we'll give you up to a 50% discount off the licenses. I mentioned, of course, that there are conditions. You need to provide the appropriate resources and make them available for the pilot during the 90-day period to make sure that it goes that is nothing standing in the way of being able to run the pilot. And with that, we're almost at the end. So I ask that you contact us now that we've excited you more than you've gotten excited all day. We can give you your own custom demo if you would like. We could talk specifics. We can tell you more about the way it works and the details. We can talk about getting you up and running in a pilot. Or if you're a customer and you don't have a partner, we can find you one of our partners that are certified on Guardian who can assist you during the implementation and beyond. So I do have some contact information down at the bottom, which of course, because this is a webinar, you can't click on them. But just get in touch with me. I will contact each of you who has attended the webinar to provide you with my contact details. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. You have 20 minutes until the next one, unless you're watching this at the end of the day or you're watching this on YouTube. Thanks again. Take care. Goodbye.